All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free at 800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X Zone 724-365 at our main website at www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is my good friend Howard Bloom. Howard joins us at least once a month to try and help me understand what in the name of heaven is going on in this crazy world of ours. When you look around the world today, we have problems in Ukraine. We have the beheading of yet another American by ISIS, Peter Kassig. We have something that's brewing in the South China Sea. We have political unrest, that's putting it mildly, in Washington. You've got the Senate and Congress who are dead against this immigration reform law that President Obama wants to put his executive signature on. And that's just scratching the top of the surface. So here to try and help me better understand what is going on is Howard Bloom. And he is the author of a very important book. I call it the Rosetta Stone to what's happening in the Middle East. It's entitled The Mohammed Code, and it's available at Amazon.com. And for more information on Howard, his main website is howardbloom.net. And old friend, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thanks, Rob. It's, as you said, it's a turbulent week around the world, and in addition to all the turbulences you just mentioned, there's Bill Cosby and the accusations of rape, and there's Ferguson, which is about to blow like a volcano, or that's at least what we fear. And the big question is, how do you put all these things into the same big picture? And that's a little bit tricky, but there's a historian named Ian Morris. He wrote a book called War, What Is It Good For?, and two other really, really good books. And Ian, in one of his books, proposes that the world, at any point in the last 3,500 to 4,000 years, the world has always needed what he calls a globocop, one big superpower enforcer of the rules. And he's quite right. When you've had a mega enforcer, a globocop, you've had periods of relative peace. There was the Pax Romana, when the Romans basically ruled at least all of the Western world. They didn't rule China. There was the Pax Britannica, when nobody could come up to Britain in power, especially military power. Was from roughly 1815 on until 1870. A nice long period of time. And now, ever since World War II, despite some small wars, we've had the Pax Americana. And Barack Obama was raised in a philosophy that seemed to indicate to him that America is the source of all of the world's woes, and if only America would become less bellicose, if only America would stop making wars, the world would have peace. Peace is the default state of humanity, and America is the one that causes the problems. Well, if Ian Morris is right, and the world needs a globocop, then the world needed America as powerful. And ever since something that you and I have talked of many times, when Obama drew a red line in Syria against the use of chemical weapons and then fudged, we've shown signs of weakness as a globocop. And that has created a problem, because it turns out that when you create power vacuums, chaos rushes in. Chaos rushes in the form of other superpowers who want to expand, and it rushes in the form of groups like ISIS that would like to take over the world. Now, I think Obama has learned his lesson, and that's why he has responded very quickly to ISIS with airstrikes. But we're all a bit puzzled about what to do beyond just airstrikes. We do know that boots on the ground does not work. We did it in Afghanistan. We did it in Iraq. We caused more harm than good. Possibly more good in Afghanistan. There are people who say that in reality education has increased, the amount of secular civic society has increased in Afghanistan, and actually things have improved in Afghanistan. But that's a small number of people saying that. And in Iraq, we broke the China. We walked into the China shop and we broke the goods. So we were puzzled about what to do next, but we do need to know that a global COP is a necessity.
All right, my friend, please stand by. Exonation Howard Bloom is our special guest. He's the author of the Muhammad Code. It's available at Amazon.com, and you can visit Howard's extensive website. It is filled with information that you cannot see anywhere else. That's at www.howardbloom.net. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Now, if you'd like to use your mobile phone and listen to the X Zone, it's very simple. 724-365 by dialing 213-401-0080. I'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute break with Howard Bloom. Don't go away. Howard Bloom is our special guest. He's the author of the Muhammad Code. It's available at Amazon.com, or you can go to Howard's website at howardbloom.net. I was watching the news feed the other day from the G20 in Australia, and the body language when it came to President Putin from everyone else was rather interesting to watch. Especially since President Putin has the bomber patrols coming with very close to the U.S. territorial waters. Why is he doing all this? You know, like he's already ruffling feathers about what's going on in the Ukraine, and now he's actually tantalizing the U.S. and other NATO nations by just bordering on their international lines. For example, I've never known before when the Russian Air Force has done patrols or exercises into the Caribbean.
It's, first of all, Putin, we know, is a bully. He's a little man. Physically, he's little. He's about 5'6". And he likes to boss around much bigger men, and when it comes to international affairs, he likes to boss around other countries. And it brings him popularity back home. The more he can shove and push against America, for example, the more his people like it, because there's an expert on Russian affairs named Karen Duisha, who gave a talk about her new book about Putin's kleptocracy at the one of the major think tanks in Washington, D.C., and she revealed that one of the things she found in her research for her book was a 1999 document put together by Putin and his cronies. He works with a little gang, and it basically said, someday we are going to destroy every bit of opposition in this country. We are going to put together a national unity government in order to face off against the extremists. Now, it didn't say anything about what kind of extremists. It's simply Putin needed extremists so that he could alarm the country and he could get them to rally around him and basically have a new tsardom. He has what Darwish referred to as boyars. Boyars were the extraordinarily wealthy nobles that clustered around the Tsar from 1500 on. Well, there are 145 men in Russia who own 35% of the Russian economy. 145 men. That's a very small little group. That's Putin's clique. And if you read, we see headlines every day about Russians sending long lines of tanks and other military vehicles into the Ukraine and causing all of the conflict in the Ukraine. Those are not the headlines that Russians see. They see headlines about America supporting a neo-Nazi government supporting an army in which the men wear swastikas on their arms and they wear SS insignia on their hats. They see America supporting an army that they are told to believe is going to, if it takes over the villages where the Russian separatists are, they are told that the forces that America supports are going to commit a genocide, a bloodbath, an ethnic cleansing, that they're going to kill everybody in town, that those people who have been officers or in some way associated with the People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, their families are going to be exterminated, their kids are going to be killed, their wives are going to be killed, they are going to be killed. This is what they're told in Russia. We have been agonizing over our suspicion that the Russians downed Malaysian flight M17.
Yes.
But the Russians know unequivocally that it was our side that downed MH17. How do they know that? Because 2 days ago, a picture was issued in the Russian press of a fighter that was allegedly a Ukrainian fighter shooting down the MH17. Now, of course, you and I both know there's something called Photoshop.
Exactly.
And with Photoshop, you can put any kind of news pictures out there that you want. You know, you can put a gorilla climbing the World Trade Center holding Hillary Clinton in his hand, if that's what you want.
You mean that wasn't real?
So, at any rate, so they are filled every day. They are given new atrocity stories, new stories of appalling things that have been done by our side. The neo-Nazis that America supposedly supports. For example, on the first day of school, there was shelling, apparently. Now, and artillery pieces fell near a school where children were lined up for their first day of school. Mm-hmm. And so the headlines in Russia read that the American-supported forces were deliberately shelling schools in order to prevent the kids of Donetsk from doing a simple basic human right, just going to school and getting an education. And in the meantime, we were killing and mangling these poor school kids just for gathering in a schoolroom to learn how to read. That's the way the Russians see this. And I have a partner a collaborator in theoretical physics, mm-hmm. Pavel Kurakin, at the Keldysh Institute of Applied Mathematics of the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow. And Pavel and I are like family. We have known each other for over 14 years, and we've worked very intensely together. Well, I'm almost afraid to email Pavel because he has been alienated against Americans further and further every day with stories about buildings that were burned by the neo-Nazi forces that the Americans support, in which 40 innocent people were killed. He sent me the pictures of the bodies of these people, the charred bodies. These people who were just like you and me. This is how you rouse a nation to fury, to the kind of fury that leads to a war. And what does Putin get out of this? Absolute control over the country. According to Karen Duisha, the latest election was a total fraud. Putin did not win it at all. And so Putin had to turn to this 1999 approach, portray a group of extremists that are such an extreme danger to the nation that the nation will rally around Putin and forget the fact that they voted against him. And that's exactly what is going on in Russia right now. And it can be very, very dangerous because in order to make himself look, you know, how Putin gets up on horseback mm-hmm. and bare-chested and shows how strong and athletic he is, that's what's sending bombers into the proximity of the United States of America. That's the equivalent. It is saying, I am big and powerful, and it is saying to the people behind you, see how big and powerful I am? You need me. Your chests swell with pride just to be a Russian because I am bringing back Russian pride. Putin tells his people that he is bringing back Russian civilization. And Russian civilization, he is telling them, is radically different from any other kind of civilization. It has values that no other civilization has. And if it wants to protect those values, it has to spread the Russian or protect the Russian population in places like Luhansk and Donetsk and a variety of other territories that he may encroach on next. So we have to make sure that we project power. The alternative of using sanctions is an interesting one, but if it doesn't work, then what's next? We don't know. We certainly don't want to catalyze a third world war.
No.
It would be the most horrible thing you could possibly imagine. We have weapons we didn't have in World War II, and we don't ever want to use them, nuclear weapons. Meantime, the Chinese are taking advantage of this opportunity of Obama's seeming weakness, even though he's shown much more strength over the last 8 months. And they are towing entire giant billion-dollar oil rigs out into territory that's claimed by other nations in the South China Sea. They're claiming the whole thing. Now, parts of the South China Sea are claimed by Thailand, by Malaysia, by Indonesia, and by the Philippines, and by Japan. The Chinese have drawn a map, and that map is appearing in their textbooks. So Chinese children are raised to believe that these territories that are claimed by other nations aren't really the territory of other nations. They're an inherent part of China. And they're basically taking over territory. They've enlisted their fishermen as paramilitaries to stake out claims on this vast territory of sea. So the idea that America is weakening its grip has been very bad for the world. Meantime, we made a total mess of Iraq, and it's in Iraq, and we made a mess of Syria. Look, our allies were the Saudis until Obama turned his back on them roughly a year ago. And the Saudis saw the Arab Spring as an opportunity. They felt that they were being encircled by Iranian puppets, and they were. The Iran does not work. We've talked about this many times, but Iran doesn't work by invading other countries. It works by having puppet armies, proxy armies. It has Hamas in Gaza. It has Hezbollah in Lebanon. It has the Houthis in Yemen, which is a relatively new phenomena, but the Saudis saw it coming 3 years ago. It surrounds with these proxy armies, and it now has 4 proxy armies in Iraq. It's developing new ones all the time. So Saudi Arabia felt surrounded, and one of the strongest pieces that Iran has acquired in the Middle Eastern puzzle in the attempt to take over the Middle East and become a superpower on a par with Great Britain, which is Iran's goal. That's why they are developing nuclear weapons. In this process, they have acquired as an ally in 1979 Bashar Assad, and they acquired Syria. Well, Syria was the biggest ally of Saudi Arabia and Egypt for a long, long time. The Saudis are scared to death of this encirclement, and they figured, okay, there's an Arab Spring. Why don't we use that Arab Spring to topple Bashar Assad and take Syria out of the Iranian sphere of influence and bring it into our sphere of influence? Well, Rob, it was an ill-conceived plan, and it didn't work. That plan has killed 200,000 people in Syria so far. It's not just Bashar Assad who has killed 200,000 people. It's those who created a so-called civil war in Syria, which is not a civil war. It's a proxy war between Iran, supporting Bashar Assad, and Saudi Arabia, supporting the so-called rebels. So we, by making Iraq free territory and allowing the Iranians to take it over, even helping them take it over, we've destabilized the Middle East. And the Iranians are making great progress. The Houthis took over Yemen approximately 3 weeks ago. So suddenly Yemen's over on the right side of Saudi Arabia, and all these other countries are on the left side of Saudi Arabia. Now that the Iranian puppets have taken over Yemen, Saudi Arabia is surrounded on 2 sides.
Stand by, Howard. We've got to take our news break. Exonation Howard Bloom is our very special guest. His website is www.howardbloom.net. He's the author of The Mohammed Code, which is available on Amazon.com. Don't forget, Exonation, the new Wiki Publishing House e-bookcase is now available at www.wikipublishinghouse.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break with the news. Don't go away.
I'm Rob McConnell, and welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Today on the X Zone, the Great Lakes Triangle of North America. Found in the the heartland of North America, these landlocked yet connected lakes, which eventually empty into the Atlantic Ocean, have become the scene of more mysteries involving ships, aircraft, people, UFOs, ghosts, and phantom ships than the Bermuda Triangle. 1/16th the size of the Bermuda Triangle, Lady John Graves Simcoe was the first European to chronicle the strange orbs of life that have been seen above and below the waters of Lake Ontario. First Canadians tell of great cities which surrounded the Great Lakes where men flew without wings. The Great Lakes Triangle of North America, one of the world's greatest mysteries, right in our own backyard.
Welcome back, everyone. Howard Bloom is our special guest. Howard is the author of many books, but one of his books that is recent is what I call the Rosetta Stone of what is going on in the Middle East. It's entitled, all right, do you have your pencils and paper ready? Okay. It's called The Muhammad Code, and it's available at Amazon.com. And for more information on Howard, visit his website at www.howardbloom.net. Howard, ISIS has once again beheaded another American, as well as 12 others who they claim to have been Syrian pilots. Am I right?
Right. It was 18. They beheaded 18 people simultaneously. And what we often forget, that who was it? It was Stalin that said one death is a tragedy and a million is a statistic. Mm-hmm. We forget the bigger scale here. We forget that these people, ISIS, are beheading people by the hundreds. But they did 18 simultaneous beheadings for a 16-minute video, a nice, long, gruesome video. Why would they release that video now? They've been falling out of the news. They need the headlines. There's something else. Every kind of social animal on planet Earth has a pecking order. There's a dominant animal at the very top, and at the very bottom is an animal that everybody gets to pick on. Absolutely everybody gets to pick on. Among chickens, that runt at the bottom of the pecking order is featherless because it's been picked on so many times. And Islam has had a strategy for making itself dominant. The Iranian constitution says Islam is dominant over all other everything, not just religions. It's dominant over all other ways of thinking. And to establish dominance, the forces of jihad deliberately try to terrify the enemy. What they ultimately want is I'm just going to say something awkward on air. What they ultimately want to accomplish is shitting in your pants terror. Why? Because if others are in that state of incredible terror, they will willingly give in to anything to keep themselves alive, and they will willingly become Muslims, and they will willingly become second-class citizens in an Islamic state, like the kind of state that right now Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the caliph, is trying to put together. Now, one thing that was overlooked in the press was that a speech of his was issued on Thursday or Friday of last week. And in that speech, he said some surprising things. One of the surprising things was our first enemy and the one we have to amputate, the ones whose heads we have to cut off and whose limbs we have to cut off, those are the Shiites. And the head of the Shiite group is the Iranians. So they're pitting themselves against the Iranians and the Shiites. That could stop them dead in their tracks. Because the Shiites, remember, the Shiites are the guys that have terrified the Saudis at this point. They have armies all over the place, and they are ruthless. They are just as ruthless, almost as ruthless as ISIS. Nobody is into the kind of mass killings that ISIS is on planet Earth right now, except ISIS. So we saw 18 simultaneously beheadings, but a great many more are going on. Plus, remember those thousands of Yazidi women, between 5,000 and 7,000 Yazidi women and children who were taken as sex slaves in August. They are still being held as sex slaves, and a couple of girls managed to escape this week and gave their story to the New York Times, and it's just as horrid as you would imagine. These girls are treated as property. They're bought and sold. They're traded like trading cards. And, of course, the right to rape them is absolute. Why? Because if you're a Muslim, if you rape them, you are injecting truth into them. They don't understand the truth. And if you can bring them to the truth, meaning Islam, that's the only truth there is on planet Earth, you are doing them a favor. If you impregnate them with a baby, that baby will be born a Muslim because you, the father, are a Muslim. So you're doing them a favor. They are giving birth to the truth. So rape is a big thing, and girls are being sold in slave markets. They have slave market days in the Islamic State now, where people can buy and sell girls. There are 5,000 to 7,000 of these just from the Yazidis alone. So what do you think there are there from other unreported sources, towns, other kinds of towns that the Islamic State has taken over where it hasn't regarded people as sufficiently Islamic or where it has seen them as total apostates, in other words, Satanists for all practical purposes, because they're Shiites. So that's going on every day, and we're, in a sense, they did us a favor by reminding us of their brutality because they had fallen out of the news. Will we ever fall into that state of abject terror and come pleading to them to just allow us to be Muslims to stay alive? I certainly hope not. But another thing that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi said in his speech at the end of last week was, we are going to the gates of Rome. Now, you have to remember, Rome has a very special meaning in the 1400-year history of Islam. Rome doesn't mean a city. Rome means an empire, and that empire covered all of Europe. So when Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi says he's going to the gates of Rome, he means he's going to take all of Europe. And he's serious about that. Remember, there was just as unlikely a phenomena taking place in the early 700s. The Muslims came storming out of Arabia, took all of North Africa, and then took all of Spain and held it for 700 years. And they were only stopped in France by Charles Martel. And over the course of the next 1,000 years, they kept taking pieces of Italy over and over again. They actually took slaves from coastal towns in England. Can you imagine that?
No,
they showed up in the middle of the night. They did midnight raids. And when people woke up in the morning, either they were men and they were dead, or they were women and they were on slave ships on their way to the slave markets of Algiers. And they could be transported as far away as the slave markets of Malaysia or Indonesia.
All right, so let me ask you this, Howard. If all this is going on, why doesn't the international community get off its butt and just annihilate these people?
It's not that easy. These people have been very adept in war. They've been around for, as I said, almost 1,400 years. Muhammad invented jihad in 624 A.D., so this has been going on ever since then. And many people have tried to annihilate them, but they have always turned the tables and annihilated the people who tried to annihilate them. War is a tricky business, and these people are very good at it. They're very, very good at it. They've been digging trenches. Now, digging trenches sounds like a modern thing. No, it's not modern at all. Muhammad did that in his second battle. He dug a huge defensive trench. When Osama bin Laden went to Afghanistan, his father was in the construction business. So the first thing that Osama bin Laden did was import digging equipment and steam and shovels, whatever those massive shovels are called, Caterpillar tractor type devices. And he started digging immediately, digging tunnels, digging trenches, because digging tunnels and trenches has been a part of the Islamic way of war for almost 1,400 years now. It's not going to be easy to wipe these people out. And again, boots on the ground has been a failure so far. We need a much more clever strategy. And one way to do it, of course, we know this from our surge. Our surge was not what it seemed to us to be. We had managed to pay off a bunch of Shiite leaders, sheikhs, heads of villages, heads of communities, to fight with us. And once they started fighting with us, we couldn't be beat because we had the right alliance. Now, al-Maliki, the head of Iraq for the last 7 or 8 years until just recently, alienated the Sunnis in every conceivable way that he could. The very Sunni allies that he needed to survive, he alienated. And so those Sunnis, when ISIS showed up, because they're Sunnis too, ISIS is Sunnis, they said, oh, wow, it's a victory for our side. We're going to join you. And they did. We need to get those people back to the best of our ability. Obama was very wise to hold out and make Maliki leave and hold out until somebody came into power who was willing to work with the Sunni population of Iraq. So it's going to take a great deal of cleverness to exterminate these people. And remember, right now they're mingled in with the population of Mosul. That's one of their headquarters. It's a 1.5 million population city. If you wipe them out, you're wiping out 1.5 million innocent civilians, plus all of these thousands of girls they're keeping as sex slaves. They own the city of Raqqaq.
I understand that. I understand that. But don't the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? Like if we're talking about stopping a global Holocaust because we can't stop them, and if it takes destroying a city, let's look at biblical times, Sodom and Gomorrah. There were good people in Sodom and Gomorrah.
The Second World War.
Yeah.
In the Second World War, we attacked 78 Japanese cities, innocent men, women, and children in their sleep. We destroyed those cities to the best of our ability. We firebombed them. It was ferocious.
But did it work?
We killed... yes, it worked. We had to use an atomic bomb in the end. It was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And we also killed 650,000 innocent civilians, innocent men, women, and children in the course of our own deliberate bombings of cities, because we felt it was necessary. Otherwise, what would follow was too horrible to contemplate.
So why isn't the same thought process going on now? Because if ISIS does control the earth,
we'll be you and I won't be around.
Exactly.
We will be beheaded.
Exactly. So what are we doing? Are we sitting back and being too politically correct because we don't want to ruffle a few feathers? We're going to let ISIS dominate the world?
Right now, it looks like there is no appetite anywhere for a huge, overwhelming effort and to destroy the lives of what would amount to 2 million people in Syria and in Iraq. And it would earn us a reputation as barbarians utterly beyond belief, although that was not what the Second World War did. It's not earned us that reputation.
And yet we worry about our reputation, but we don't worry about the reputation of ISIS and what they're doing. Hey, come on, enough is enough.
And many people complain about this, but we're not honest about what ISIS does. Remember, Muhammad invented jihad. And
we invented the bomb.
Yes, that's true. But in Islam, you are supposed to be holy and righteous and just. You are supposed to follow every footstep that Muhammad took. Well, Muhammad commandeered 65 military campaigns. Mm-hmm. He personally led 27 of them and killed men with his own weapons. And he was merciless about exterminating the entire population over the age of pubic hair. Any male who had pubic hair in an entire village, he exterminated, to set an example of how you exterminate people on behalf of Islam. So when we won't use the word jihad because it's too closely associated with Islam, when we won't use the word Islamic terrorist, we just use the word terrorist, we're not being entirely honest. But your solution, I'd really have to think about that.
Why?
It did work.
What's there to think about?
Because there's a superpower element here that we're overlooking. You know that I've been advocating that we ally with Bashar Assad.
Sure.
Because Bashar Assad is the only one with the boots on the ground who's willing to be ferocious enough to exterminate ISIS.
But that's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. But Bashar Assad comes attached to Russia, and so does Iran. Iran comes attached to Russia. Well, so I'm thinking this out loud, Rob, so bear with me.
Okay.
So if we were to exterminate ISIS, which is a great enemy to Iran, and it is a great enemy to Bashar Assad, the Russians wouldn't get in the way. So at least we're safe there. We wouldn't set off a domino effect that would lead to a world war. It's something to consider, and you know that the military men have said in front of Congress that if what we're doing right now doesn't work, then they will come back with other suggestions that will work. And they've spoken specifically about boots on the ground, but they're waiting for us. ISIS is waiting for us to put boots on the ground. They want to start beheading Americans. That's when they think they're really going to win. Their magazine is named after a town in which the final battle that will end all time will take place between the European Crusaders and the forces of Islam. And they're looking forward to that. They know they're going to win, which doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win, but I would not put boots on the ground. And your approach, I have to think about. It's a very tricky proposition to wipe out tons of.
But you know what's happening?
People.
The United States of America is being bullied by Russia, is being bullied by ISIS. And it reminds me of the kid in the schoolyard that everybody picks on because they don't do anything about it.
Right, and it makes us look weak. And again, if we're going to be the RoboCop, there's no way in hell we can look weak. There's just no way that we can look weak. So we may need to get a more decisive president, but that's not for another 2 years. This
well, why don't you just get rid of this president? He's not doing anything anyway.
Well, that would take an impeachment process, and the impeachment process really wouldn't be able to find anything that he's done that's impeachable, and the impeachment process would drag on for years, and then we'd really be in a state of walking paralysis, sleepwalking. So your solution is certainly an interesting one. If we wiped out Raqqa and if we wiped out Mosul, ISIS would really be on the rocks. They'd have very little left. But it could, you never know. It's something you really, really, really have to think out very carefully. Human lives are precious.
But
That's
once
why we
again,
get
but once
18 people beheaded.
But once again, war is war.
Yeah,
war is war. Now, if these people win and they keep on gaining strength and moving towards this, Sharia law comes into effect, and the next thing you know, Europe is overtaken. What are we going to do? Let them come into the United States and Canada?
They announced last week, and most of our news sources missed this.
Howard, we've got to take a break. Hold on to that thought.
Okay.
Exonation. Howard Bloom is our special guest. www.howardbloom.net. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. And you know what? Let's stand up to these people once and for all. Draw the line in the sand. Except this time, mean what you're going to do. We'll be back. Don't go away. Oh, geez, there goes my career as a politician. Nobody's going to send me to the UN, I'll tell you that much. I remember several years ago, somebody asked my wife why I didn't run in politics, and she said because he'd be dead very fast. He's too damn honest. All right, let's talk about something else. Speaking about honesty. Hey. Bill Cosby. Allegations of rape. Howard, what do we do?
Well, okay, you got to understand what celebrity is really all about. Henry Kissinger said that attention is the ultimate aphrodisiac, and he meant that in two different senses. He meant that when a woman pays an awful lot of attention to a man, it turns a man on. And he also meant that when a man gets a huge amount of attention, it turns women on. So when you get into the kind of power position that Bill Cosby had when in the days of the Cosby Show, and he's had ever since because he's a living legend, all of a sudden, all kinds of women become sexually interested in him. You should have seen when I was standing next to Henry Kissinger, and Henry was in his 80s, and two women in their 50s who looked like attractive young girls, by Henry Kissinger's standards. You could hear their sexual organs smacking their lips over Henry. It was an astonishing thing to see. I had never seen anything like it in my life. But that is what celebrity does. But another thing that happens with celebrity is that you can get to the point where your head gets so swelled that you think it isn't that you think you're beyond the limitations of what others have to obey. You become intoxicated, and momentarily you lose control. You fail to follow you fail to respect the boundaries anymore. So it's undoubtedly true that all kinds of women were willing to make themselves available to Bill Cosby in his days of ultimate power, no matter what his marital status was. And then, of course, he had to make moral choices about, am I going to be faithful to my wife or not? But it is also possible, but we don't know, that he was carried away by the intoxication of celebrity and did things that he shouldn't have done. I seriously doubt that he tried to rape anybody.
Can I just throw in a possibility?
Yeah.
Maybe he's a dirty old man.
That could be. That could easily be.
Let's see what stirring this pot is going to bring out.
Right. Well, unfortunately, I don't know what show he had. He had another show that he was starting, and apparently he was thrown off the show this week because of these rape allegations. and let's hope that we find out the truth. We really, really don't know. And then another situation where we really, really don't know is Ferguson.
Big time.
And that is explosive. And how a situation in the middle of America gets as explosive as this one has gotten is a little bit of a mystery, except that we've had years now. It was started in New York City, the stop and frisk laws, but long before stop and frisk, black men were treated as if they were criminals by white policemen. It's been going on for a long time, and they've been treated with extreme indignity.
But what would have happened in Ferguson if it would have been a black officer that killed a white suspect? Nothing.
We don't complain about that.
No, of course not. Of course not. So,
no,
and
you're
now,
definitely right. It's a racial thing. But there's something else to be aware of.
We've got about 40 seconds.
Okay. Have you seen the tape of Michael Brown in the convenience store?
Yep.
It's monstrous.
Yep.
He's a bully.
Yep.
He is a bully, a very dangerous 280-pound, 6'4" bully with no regard for the lives of the people who are smaller than he is.
Yep.
He whisks them off him as if they were flies.
Yep.
And so we have two potentially dangerous people here. Michael Ferguson, or Michael Brown, it doesn't matter that he wasn't armed. He was an armament.
Yeah. And
a policeman who has a previous track record, apparently, of arrogance, and a lot of policemen are arrogant and
Howard,
very bad
we've got to say so long for now. We've just run out of time. Howard Bloom has been our guest, www.howardbloom.net. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.